Maybe I ask you, is there an art archive in Vietnam?
Hello, hello. Thank you for presentation.
Yeah.
Actually, as I mentioned in the beginning of the talk, is that I see your activity as something like very poetic. It's from my perspective because it's located in between of historizing and memorizing. But I would like to ask you, have you ever offered by Singapore Art Museum or National Gallery to buy your archive?
Well, I mentioned that they wanted to borrow my 30 years newspaper after Singapore Biennale, then they cancel. They say they have no money.
No money.
Then before the opening of the National Gallery, they say they want to buy, but don't want newspaper.
So how about if they pay, I mean, $1 million?
Huh?
How about if they offer to pay kind of, like amount of money?
Okay, the money is $250,000.
It's quite a lot, right?
No, it's $30 per item. We have to buy from National Archives Singapore 50 plus for a copy. Why should I sell them $30 for my original?
But I would like to ask you, this is just a matter of amount of money. I mean, if they can offer the correct price, the proper price, you will sell?
No, they already explained there is no policy to buy archive.
Oh, I see.
So they want to buy my archive as an artwork that they will put in the opening exhibition.
But do you think your archive is an artwork too?
My archive is not an artwork. But when I present the archive, it's an artwork.
I see.
How I present, yeah? My archive is my garbage, right? My mother complain all the time, my sister complain all the time, right? So it's my problem. But when I show the archive, when I help students who need the materials, it's different. It's different in terms of value, all right?
Thank you. That is the end of my question. Any other questions?
So you asked if we have an art archive in Vietnam?
Yes.
Because I'm studying art history from the Fine Art University. So we have a few of could be institute. There's the Vietnam Art Institute, and there's a library at the Fine Art University, and they also, I think, it's a kind of like Ministry of Art. So each of them they have a small library, but and also from the National Library, but there's nothing complete, yeah. And also. The way I study art history at the university, most of the time when they teach you art history, they only teach you the kind of pre-modern art history. And it's all pretty much based on the archaeological method. Yeah. Just like rarely, like sometimes one or two a professor teaching maybe world art history, but it's also very kind of like from a textbook, like I think coming from the 80s.
Yes.
Yes, very simple. During the time, maybe Vietnam and the Eastern Europe have a connection, and they have this book, and then the teacher just come and read the book to the students. And the teacher doesn't even read English, so she could not update what happens. And you mentioned about Veronika Radulovic. You also know her activity with the Fine Art University, because I think she's during the time she also doing a lot of not necessarily like art history classes, but a lot of film screenings to the students. That way, a lot of students got to know more about different artists' way of practice. And just now, I think there's just a few research on modern and contemporary Vietnamese art, both from inside and both from outside. And the archive, beside now, there's the official archive from Natasha. There's nothing else. And because I study art history and because I know these artists, I know artists, the one who active in the 90s, like my friends, so I always want to trace back this kind of archive and history. But it's really difficult because even the artists, especially this generation, they don't care. They just like, I don't want to remember that time. I'm done with that period, and I don't want to, you know, just trying to show it. But I mean, as someone who study art history or someone like you interested in history, I think it's really important. So over the last few years, I've been trying to approach different people, because I also think that maybe not from the artists, but then maybe like journalists, maybe like some people who used to follow a lot of these activity at the time. So one by one, like I have a little bit of information, but it's really fragmented, and also it's really, for example, if someone likes some artist and they just take photographs of that artist. So that also a kind of thing that I've been thinking a lot about, and how, like how can we construct this kind of archive? Even it could be. But I mean, I also thinking about a lot about the limitation of art history, and it's put everything just in one linear. And for me, it's not happened that way. It's happened like a matrix. There's many different connections. So yeah. So up till now, I don't know where we're going.
Okay. I tell you, because the textbook on Southeast Asia is Angkor, stop, right? Yeah. So in terms of Asian art history, I think Fukuoka has taken the lead. You know, from 1979 they started to do Asian art, and I think Japan Foundation, they also, you know, but I think it's quite different from Fukuoka because and anyway, so when I do my archive project and I exhibit them, I keep telling my young friends in Singapore, I said, you do art history, you do from now and work backward, not from beginning, because you will never reach here. You last 20 years, last 30 years, you can do it. But you will never from Angkor to here, you will never reach, okay? But of course, there are exhibitions and with new publications on more modern, contemporary Southeast Asian art history. Of course, I think most people will rely on the museums, like in Singapore or museum in Japan, to offer the story. But how many, for example, how many Vietnam artists can represent your country in this kind of international exhibition? Not many, right? So that means there are many artists still not introduced to the other countries, right? So, but you know, you live here and you know the artists last 20, 30 years or something like that. Then you build up the knowledge from this real experience. Nobody can take this knowledge from you or give you this knowledge except you. So you work in this art scene, you collect things, right? You interview, because now it's easy to interview, to record, right? And this is your material for your future archive, right? And all artists have some archives, right? Don't wait until they die, because sometimes when they die in Singapore, rubbish, they become throwaway. So it's a waste. So I see so many in Singapore, so I tell myself, I don't want to be the same as the old artists. So I want, now I have chance to know the archive. I make exhibitions. I don't want to wait for the National Archive to do it because it never happened. It will never happen. So I'm happy that I have been exhibiting my archive for the last 10 years or 12 years. And new generation of Singapore students, they are, curators, journalists. At least they know enough to work, But for uncle to hear is too long, right? So I always tell people from today, yesterday, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it's easy, right?
I should like to answer your question about who has some sort of like archive about art in Vietnam. Trần, you might know, you must know him. He also has a lot of material in archive. What he did during his career, I think it's also for Nyasan studio and also his own exhibition and artwork as well. And I know that he's sort of like working with his archive as well.
Yeah, I think Singapore is lucky because we are so small, right? What I do is really for the whole country, history. But you are a city in the south, Vietnam, and your artist may not be in the south or the north, maybe in the middle, right? That foreign curators will not visit, right? And then you have a local newspaper that write about your artist, but in Singapore, one newspaper is for the whole country, right? So if they write, okay, I got the information, but there's so many they don't write, right? So then for bigger country like your country is even more complicated. So every artist will have some archive. Every institution will have some archive. Zero Station will start from this year in the new space. This is your new archive. Then you add the old venue, right? So 20 years, you have 20 years of Zero Station archive, right? So everyone has experience, memory, and documentation, right? And in the past, we used film, very expensive. Now it's mobile phone. You can document, right?
Actually, I would like to add some more my question. I think that your archive, one of the most interesting aspect of your archive is that you include in your archive. So yeah, actually you are organic part of your archive, right?
Yes.
So the people not just invite your archive to show, but they invite you, and you are the one who make your archive become an artistic project in many different forms.
Yeah.
But now we have the question: is how about in the 30 or 50 years? What's the situation of the archive? Sorry, that question.
Yeah, good. Of course, I will die. Maybe tomorrow, but I will die. Everyone will die.
Who will run it?
Yes. So it depends on my feeling with Singapore institution, whether I love them to give them. But why should we give? I mean, why can't they buy? Yeah? So I have to decide which is the best place for my archive. But before I die, I just share through exhibition, through when they research, I share the information, and then with the new thing they write, we'll create something new, right? So even when I die, nobody have my archive, but maybe 10 new writers, they have used my material and they write new topics, they will be for the future, right? So maybe in the future, they say, Mr. Koh archive is old-fashioned, not interesting, right? Yeah. So before I become old-fashioned, I make the archive relevant for people who need this material for their study, for their work, or for their projects. So this is how I do it. And I hope I can have another 20 years, right? I'm 54 this year.
Of course.
Right?
But actually, you know, my question is not just about that. My question is about you are the organic part of your archive. So, sorry, if I'm you know, like say that it's not just about the thing that you will left your archive for someone else or relevant for any other project, but you, in this way, you are the organic part of your archive. So maybe without you, your archive, sorry, I can say, without you, your archive may be invaluable. Without you.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, so I donate this to Zero Station, and then the people come to your library, they see this without seeing the actual exhibition. It's like any library, right? So what they get out of this is up to them, right? Maybe first time they don't understand. Maybe this thing is still in your library. Next month they come, oh, they have another idea. They see, Mr. Ho is at the back, you know. Then maybe 5 years later, they do a PhD. Oh, this is more important, right? So, and of course, I always stay in my archive, in my installation as the archivist with story, right? So I keep telling people they are no different from, the material I collect. But of course, they are different when I collect. This, when I put this in this slideshow, there is some connection with what I collected 20 years ago. But this is something new now, happening now, okay?
Let me check,
yeah.
You know, because we have this time for, you know, speaking. I think my question is mentioned to the point is that the difference between individual archiving and institutional archive. So with the institutional archive, the role of the individual is nothing. So without someone, the archive in museum is still there, right? In any, you know, like a Asian archive, whatever, without anything, because this is the collective, you know, collection. But with you invested your eye, you invested, you know, like a time and, you know, your experience. So that's why I say that this still have to done something different between, you know, your activity of archiving things and institutional archive. And I think that the gap is never be, you know, filled. That I just try to explain what I would like to say.
Many of my friends ask me, Mr. Cole, why don't you do a PhD? I say, no, I don't have a first degree. I can't do PhD. I can't do master degree because they don't want to accept me because I'm only high school, right? But in my talk, I always say my working experience in the National Museum, 7 years, that was my university. My degree is special from other degree. It's real working knowledge, right? But should I try to get a degree? I don't need one at my age. I don't need. But yeah, I think maybe because, let's say in Singapore, not many artists do archive. Now there are young generation doing archive, okay? But they don't have the collection like I have, okay? Maybe because of that, people think I'm so important, you know, my archive is so important. But I always think it's not so, right? Because there are so many artists with even more precious archive material. But the sad story is that many old artists, they are sick. Yeah, they lost memory, which I'm losing. I forgot 2 minutes ago what I said, but yeah, dementia. So I a little bit worried. Yeah. So I think in my archive project, I think the way I exhibit it and also make available for especially people who need this material. I always ask them this question too. If I'm not around, right, you have no access to my archive, where can you go in Singapore? I always ask them this question, where can you go? Like I ask you, where can you go in Vietnam? Then you say there are many different, right? Yeah, good. At least you have other alternatives, right? But in Singapore, right, because I work in the National Museum, only 3 people in the art department, 2 curators, I'm the assistant, right? So it's very few people with that kind of special knowledge that I decide I have to make archive. I stopped documenting young artists because from 2000 I stopped documenting young artists because I cannot go 2 directions. I cannot go forward, which I need to spend the time. I also need to spend time on the old artists and the dead artists. So I decided from 2000 I spend time on the old generation. But I'm still alive. I still read news. I still use Facebook. So sometimes I still document young artists, right? So, and then the more I continue 2 directions, the more gaps I notice in between when I imagine I did. So then I want to make my archive perfect. Then I try to get the missing material. Then I realized, no, I cannot do it because I will die, you know? So I have to let go. I have to feel that I have done enough, right? And share this, right? And if I die tomorrow, I die tomorrow. To be honest, when I travel, I never tell my parents what happened if I die.
It's very important.
Yeah, but I hope I don't die tomorrow. I still want to come back here.
Hello,
thank
you so much for the presentation. I actually would like to ask a question because I think that the archiving aspect of what you do is extremely important because obviously in a lot of the examples that you showed, there were a lot of institutional kind of mistakes that were made. I am particularly interested in you using this archiving format as an artistic medium. And so in a way I could kind of understand what he was saying. Because at some point in your career, your archive started to be shown elsewhere as an art project, as an exhibition, and you know there were times where you looked at time as a starting point. You look at mistakes in newspaper as a starting point. You look at this collective idea of what Southeast Asia was and is as a starting point. And for me, these are artistic decisions. So when did that come about? When did you start, looking at the archive or using the act of archiving or representing the archive as a kind of artistic methodology? And also, what is then the difference between the archive as itself and the archive as artworks, as art exhibitions for you?
Yeah, I think I worked 7 years at the National Museum. We have many hundreds of exhibitions from all over the world, except Vietnam. And of course, after I became an artist, I still have that kind of background with me as a museum staff. And of course, I may use some of the curatorial strategy or curatorial decision, right? And of course, I suppose if I call my archive as an installation, site-specific installation, I can easily fool people, right, to accept me, accept my work. But of course, I cannot put everything under the label of installation or site-specific. The content has to be good, right? So each different situation, I make sure that the content, the stories are relevant to the exhibition that I'm taking part. So that also allow me to think of new ways of presenting the archive. Like more recent, the last 2 years is through the mobile apps, right? This is something new which Tokyo liked very much, which is also employed by many museums now, right? But it's also because it's suitable for certain kind of materials that are not suitable to appear in the actual, let's say, for conservation reason, right? Or insurance reason. It's too expensive to ship, to transport this material. So there are methods that come because of the real situation that I face, right? The longer I keep the old archive, the danger is greater of damaging, right? And allow people to touch my things with gloves. Some people don't use gloves, you know, I understand, right? But the more you turn the paper, the weaker the material become, right? So I need to think of digitization, right? Then copyright issue comes into the picture. But in Singapore, we have the government changing the copyright so that they allow the museums and the library to have the right to have all materials without copyright. So that means they try to have the old material so that they can have material in their institution for public use. Otherwise, people always come to my archive, right? They cannot perform what they should be, right? So in a way, my archive project is also to force them to do what they should be doing, because I will die. The institution will continue after the people working in there die. But you know, to add on, a good archivist, people working in the archive can be as good as me. They don't have to be just data entry and putting the materials in certain categories. They can also have some knowledge in art history. They can be, you know, as interesting as how I organize the material in the archive, you know. So someone asked me about being an archivist and an artist, you know. So I think an archivist can also be an artist if they present the idea, the materials in acceptable art context, right? So far, people invite me, I present my archive. Sometimes I don't like the presentation because they put my materials in cover. It's not what I want. I want people to touch, to smell, right? If I behave like the library and the archive, then why should I do this archive project? So that means I should do this archive project different from what is already there or not there, right? So this is my challenge to keep doing this project. If I want to be known as an artist, I have to be as good as other artists who, I mean, they present their own artwork, but not archive, but in their own artwork, in whatever medium. But here I am doing archive as my artwork. I don't want people to accuse me of just, you know, just under this this label. I mean, this new trend of artists working with archive, and just keep showing the same the same way. So I try to avoid that situation that people say, Mr. Ko, you are old-fashioned, you keep showing the same thing, right? But I also ask people, if this material is in the National Archive or National Library or National Gallery, are they the same thing? For the next 30 years, they are still the same thing. It's the user, the people who use this material, who make meaning, right? So I think there's not much big difference. One is that I have this material, I actively show them in different ways. The national don't have what I have, right? So I don't know. I hope I answer your question. Yeah.
Hi. I was just wondering what would happen to the archive if your archive, if it belonged to the National Museum or to the Singaporean government,
yes,
when they continue to lead a clear and neutral vision, or when they exclude, some of the artists or artworks that are anti-government?
Yeah, good question. First, they told me, the National Gallery told me that they don't have the policy to buy and budget to buy archive, as archive. But they can spend the money on the archive as artwork, which I did not sell them. Okay? As to some collectors in Singapore, they refuse to have their things donated or sell to the National Library, for example, or National Archive for the fear of censorship, or storing them somewhere that nobody sees. All right? So it depends on who has the power, who have this archive, and then how they make this archive available. Are they very free in terms of helping people access to this material, or do they have a control over what kind of materials can be, right? So in our situation in Singapore, they already said to me about their policy. So knowing the policies, then why should I, keep pushing them to have my archive, right? Until they change the policy. So in the meantime, I show wherever want to see my archive, right? And yes, I mean, the question of when the archive may be damaged because of raining, flood, right? Insects, right? Or human, people steal from library and archive, right? Yeah, but I cannot think too much about that. Since they say they have no policy to buy as archive, so be it. I will still have my archive with me, and I would make exhibitions when there is a opportunity, right? And then we see what happens, because we don't know what's happening in the future. But of course, accident may happen to anyone. So, but anyway, I think, so if I worry too much, what happened to my archive? Then I should put a will somewhere when I die. What happened? Who should have my archive? But whose question is, they don't have the story when they have the physical material, right? But then I say, the material is the same as, because it's published material, unless it's photograph material. Like when I'm here with you, my photograph is one unique view, right? Only one camera from this, right? So that means this material is very rare. But there are 5 cameras from your view, 5 people have image of here, all right? So they are not so rare, but 5 versions, right? So I can say that my photographs are very rare, which I have 100% copyright. The newspapers, magazine, catalogs, they are published by artists, museums, galleries. They are not so precious compared to my photographs, right? But, of course, a good archive will have everything, including the sound, right? Which I have sound recordings of artists, which I need to spend the time to play the cassette, to turn to MP3. Then I say, oh my God, I don't have the time to listen to hours of recordings, right? So I think I don't know whether I explained, but yes, the fact is some countries, especially let's say newspapers or magazines, because of the censorship or the freedom of the press, or even the writers, right? So you may have this material, this archive, but do you believe in what they have published, right? So you have to look at your own situation. Do you believe in, let's say, the things that are written by the North, or the North will say, do they believe in the things produced by the South, right? So this situation may happen, yeah? I'm here, I presented something that are more North, more from the North Vietnam. So in Singapore's context, there's a strong feeling against the American, right? But that is only from a certain group of writers and publishers and artists, right? That I have assessed, right? But if I look at the government's archive, they are more pro-Americans, anti-North Vietnam, right? But I don't need that. I don't need to use the archive. It's very obvious, right? To go to the National Archive, you will find those kind of materials, because it's political situation, political reason that they will keep those things, right? Or they will write certain things about North Vietnam or South Vietnam, right? But since 1995, Vietnam joined ASEAN, right? So we are now officially friends. Yeah, but of course in artistic sense, artistic networking, we have to learn. We have to learn from each other. We have to, yeah, we learn how to be friends, right? Because red color is, you know, can be different meaning, right? In the North and in the South, right? Just Burmese artists told me they cannot mix red with black. In their painting, they cannot, because it's violence. It's a meaning about violence. So the government don't allow them to use black with red. Right? So these are things that we may not know. So coming here, of course, this is my second day. All right. Of course, I can always Google and things like that but do I trust everything on the internet? Right? So I think it's all a mixture of everything. Getting to know the person, getting to know a good source of information, all right? And then over time, you will know. Over time, you will know. Of course, friendship should be over time, right? Yeah, at least I'm meeting with Hui in Hong Kong in 2010 through the social media, through Facebook, through indirect, you know, exhibitions. We keep in contact, right? So he knows what I'm doing, I know what he's doing, and then I got invited here, and then I try to put something up not just about my archive, but a little bit about Vietnam through Singapore Eye, which is only selectively, right? So there may be things that I don't show here because it's too political to show.
Next time.
Next time? Yeah.
Political.
Yeah, a lot of cartoons. So yeah, and music. Yeah? I used to photograph the rock bands in Singapore. Yeah. So anyway, I think I think this is a good start. I am very happy to be here, and we keep in touch. I'm on Facebook. You can join me on Facebook. I have 200 over albums. Sometimes I lock performance art places, plants, animals, art events. Yeah. So, but we have many Vietnam people now in Singapore. Yeah. Many students. Yes.
I think some of us, or all of us here, know the page archive.org, right? Archive.org. So, like, basically, it's like a public archive of a lot of books.
Right.
Before, I mean, and a lot of books are fall under the Creative Commons category. So, do you think of, or you consider to like donating some of your archive collections to that website so that more people can have access to such treasures?
I think to offer archive materials online, you need the copyright. You need to.
Yeah, I know. So I'm
copyright.
saying like that page, that website basically deals with materials that like the copyrights already already expired.
Yeah. So in Singapore, of course, we do have, I do have things that are no more copyright because the artist dead for 50 years, or now we need 70 years, no more 50 years. Or the art groups that no more, they closed down by the government, let's say in the 1970s, so whatever they published before in my archive, I don't think any one of them will come and say, Mr. Ko, you have copyright, right? So I have to look at each situation, what the materials that in my archive, what are the things that still belong to the family, what are the things that belongs to the copyright owner that is still around. So I think at the moment I just use Facebook to put some of my archive, right? And then maybe in the future, when I'm good enough to be, to do, I don't know, to use this electronic medium, I may consider, right? Gwangju Asia Cultural Center have bought some pictures of exhibitions and performance art from me last year. So you can see some through the archive of ACC, which they hope to offer, access to all people in the future, but it's only limited selection.
So that kind of leads to the second questions. Okay, a little backstory. I know a guy in Saigon, and they kind of in the, I'm not sure how big the circle is, but they have a group of collectors. I don't call them archivists. They just collect a lot of stuff in Saigon before 75, and that kind of expand to a lot of things, from coins to like dog tags and stamps and music notation of like Saigon 75, and they kind of make a business out of it. So
yeah, good idea. And actually, yes. After I appeared in the BBC article, which he has shared, some people approached me with that kind of idea because to maintain this archive, I need money, I need space. And usually when I help students, there is no money. right? And then the museum said they have no money to buy. So what happened is that, to have to continue this archive, I need exhibitions, right?
So that's the only source of income to you?
Yeah, but then how much can exhibition make, right? Right?
I don't know, of course.
Yes, of course. Some people ask me what I do. Of course, I teach. I used to teach in school. I teach printmaking, woodcut. I teach sculptures. I design magazine covers, book covers. Yeah. So and I work at home. So I don't need to travel. I don't have to spend so much on transportation and food, right? So, but the archived material are stuck in the house, 2 houses, right? And then every time people write me an email saying, Mr. Koh, can I get something? And then I say, yeah, you can come, but then you can come, but you cannot move. Yeah, no space, right? So, so I think I have to decide what I want to throw from my newspaper collection. My newspaper, I have everything except business news.
This interesting thing. I mean, like for certain things that they can have different copies, like newspapers or stamps. But other things you only have like a unique copy of it, or they're the only version of it. But some actually trade it. I mean, in Vietnam, it's kind of irony that people actually trade it for money to buy more stuff.
I know. So I have stamps.
But they don't do that.
I have stamps too. So I think yes, I have to think how I can get some money so that I can continue this more interesting part of the archive project. Right, so maybe sell away football news. But some people want football news, right? So football is big in Vietnam, yeah? Okay, it's big. Yeah.
I just have, so you were talking about, so you see the archive not just as like an amalgamation of information, but also as art. When they are put in certain contexts, they're also artworks.
Yes.
So there's this component of artworks that you have to be able to experience it, like as you said, like for people to touch it, to feel it. There's a big movement right now to digitize archive. So to put everything on the internet, kind of scan and digitize everything. But that also takes away the experiential aspect of it. You only see like a replica or representation of the information. So what do you think about that? Are you going to digitize your archive?
I think this question is similar to artwork, drawing or painting or sculptures. Do you just keep the digital copy of the painting and then don't keep the original painting? Right? So it depends on if the museum, if you are a museum or a gallery for art, then you need to have to have mostly originals. Right? And then the archives are just in your resource library that serves the purpose of additional information, right? But the artwork is most important, right? So for my archive, I think is first I need another life to digitize my collection. Not possible.
Volunteers.
Yes. So there are people who say I can have students and volunteers, but then do I not have to pay them food and drinks sometimes? Right? Then no space. I don't have the physical space, right, in my house. So only when I have exhibitions or residency, I hope people come to use. But it's only for a short period. But it's still good. Whoever spend the time to visit my archive during the exhibitions, they probably get more than they study somewhere. Right? So I always tell people, this is an artist, an old man, an old woman, very old. Now this person come to the exhibition, and you are a young artist or a young historian. You're not too sure whether this person is an artist or not an artist. Ask them, ask her. So I regret not talking to some artists when they were alive. I regret not listening to their voice. Now I have the text, but even if I want to use the text, and then I need the voice that is close to their real voice to do something on the media, on the electronic medium, right? Because I want the written text to be read out in a voice that is close to the artist. But if I never hear the artist before, I can't do that. So I cannot do that kind of presentation. So everything is dead. I mean, right? The words is just written there, unless I translate them, right? But translation to, they say Chinese to English, then I can't, there's no point asking someone to read in English because English was not his original language. So I need a Chinese voice for that Chinese text. So these are things that I want to show. I want to use in my exhibitions. That the archive materials are just, dead. But it's up to the user, up to the curator, up to how you want to make them interesting and also make them accessible to people, right? Otherwise, it's, for me, no point doing the archive because I can always go to the National Archive. But the fact that they don't have the things that I have, you see, I can always say, I don't do it. But if I don't do it, then who will do it? Then I end up doing it, and then I end up bearing the cost, bearing the consequences of having this archive. And then the more you bear with this archive, maybe the more you fear you will die. Right? Then I have to imagine that I already did. Then I feel better with this archive situation. So it's always a lot of telling myself, yeah.
Sorry, just a comment, not a question. Combining what Huy and Hùng just saying, I think for your role, the idea that Huy mentioned is you were part of your archive. I think your role now is like, if we imagine in the old society, like you are the storytellers from, for example, a village, then you are the one that have all the wisdom and you're telling a story. And I think that how originally from the traditional society, for example, that how Arabian Nights or Greek mythology is continue the tradition of oral history, and then it could be contribute like from generation and generation, and people keep retelling it in their old version, but still it's actually last longer than we thought. For me, I feel the effort to archive is a kind of like idea from the modernity. Is where you want to categorize. You want to have museum, you want to have library, you want to know everything about the world. You want to be everything scientifically, but it's not really the truth somehow. So I think it doesn't matter whether what's going to happen next. Whatever that you've been done, and you've been sharing the story in this room, or you've been sharing your story somewhere else, we will remember and we will tell the story. And I think that's more meaningful.
But then, I may be not telling you the truth, and you believe it, and then you pass my story to another person.
But I think the truth doesn't matter, because there's no truth.
Yeah, so I think, yes,
It's a poetic truth.